Next, we're going to go ahead and do just a couple of simple tasks. We're going to put the Cowcatcher on the front, and we're going to put a coupler on the back so that we can connect train cars. So to make my Cowcatcher, I'm just going to kind of make a simple one, but try to show you a couple new things here. Just going to make a rectangle on the face. Note that I'm not opening up the group. I'm drawing this rectangle on top of the group. And the reason I'm doing that is because I'm going to want to take and have my Cowcatcher be its own group so that, well, you'll see why later on. If you accidentally make it part of the group, it's not a big deal. You can always come back and fix this stuff. So then I'm going to take my tape measure tool and just grab a spot like right there and drag across till I find the midpoint. There it is right there. And then I'm going to make a line coming up like this. And then I'm going to select that line and type in M for move and click on the line and kind of pull it out like this. Let's take a look at the top view here and see how that looks. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Let's come back here and now do a little bit of modifying with this. Notice it did not make a face right here, and that's because I pulled out this face and this face, but there wasn't anything back there. So all I really need to do is draw a line segment across like that, and same thing here. Now I'm going to take my select tool and click outside so nothing is selected. And the next skill is one you probably haven't seen before. We've moved faces, we've moved circles, we've moved groups, we've moved line segments like we just did, but we've never moved a point. So with nothing selected, I'm going to type in M for move, and I'm just going to grab that M point right there, and then I'm just going to click and drag it down. Not all the way down, because that'll make the 3D printing just a little bit harder, but just like so. And there's our Cowcatcher. So I'll triple click on that, right click, make it a group. Okay, let's move to the other end. Okay, let's see here. Let's come up with some geometry first of all. Again, I'm going to use my tape measure tool. Put some layout work on here. I'm going to come to the midpoint. Now take and pull this across, I'm going to say 3/16 of an inch. There we go. And then I'm going to take my rectangle tool and let's see, I'm just going to make a rectangle. Well, let's see, rectangle's probably not going to work so well. So I'm just going to take my line tool, come out along the green axis, 1/8 of an inch, and then parallel to the red axis. Well, I'm just going to come out like that, and then I'll hit escape and continue my line. Continue. Oh, I see why. Yeah, this is actually over here, isn't it? So let's have this come out along the green axis. I'll kiss that right there. Click. And then I'm just going to erase this line and redraw it. One of the limitations on working on a 2D screen. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make an arc. That is a half circle. So I'm going to click from here to here and then bulge out along the green axis, very important, until it comes up and tells me half circle. There we go. I'll click there and that finished that face. We need to draw a line across here like this. To make a face there, I'll erase this line. Don't need it anymore. P for push pull and pull this up till it's even halfway. Now if you already erased those lines, just come up with 1/4 of an inch. That would be the right amount. Okay, so next I'm going to click on this and align my view. So I'm looking straight at it. I've got a little line segment right here, don't I? And so I'm going to use my tape measure tool again to pull across until I find that midpoint right there. And then I'm going to C for circle, and I'm just kind of eyeballing this right here. I want this to be about 1/8 of an inch. I can move the circle if I don't like it. So there it is, 1/16 of an inch radius is a 1/8 of an inch diameter, and I like that just fine. If I didn't, I could select it, click move, click out here, and move it up and down. But I'm just going to hit escape because I like it, and then I'm just going to orbit around here just a little bit, select that face, P for push pull, and come up 1/4 of an inch. So there is my coupler. Just going to right click on that and make it a group. But I could make it a component, but I'm not going to get into components in this lesson because I'm just trying to keep it simple. So there's that. We just got a couple things left to do, and we'll be beginning our process of laying this all out for 3D printing. Now let's go ahead and talk about how we can fancy this up. I'm going to go ahead and insert an image so that we can look at it at the same time. It's just one I found on Google Images. And I'm not going to keep it here, but let's see. Let's just go ahead and place about right there. I'll click and then I'll drag to kind of give it a decent size. Then I'll select it, Q for rotate, come down to here, tap my arrow keys until I get what I want. So I'll click there, and come up 90 degrees. You can see here, and there's so many different locomotives, different styles. I mean, they made these things in the hundreds of thousands, for over a century. When we look at the Cowcatcher here, you can see they have some supports. Now we could add those, and we could build this type of Cowcatcher, but these supports would be difficult to 3D print. Likewise, our boiler's not really a cylinder, it's just a half cylinder because it's a toy. And then it's got these things. I'm not really sure what those really even are, but something you can add. Now they've got a big light up here, and they used to burn carbide, which was very hot. If you want to vary the size of your wheels, you could certainly do that. You could add more wheels. Possibly you could incorporate these linkages, these arms, but they would need to be printed separately, that sort of thing. A little different style window, a little more complicated, but you could certainly add that if you want. And then the roof is just a little bit different too. But we were never trying to duplicate this. We just wanted to come up with something that would be fun and we could learn and that we could 3D print. And then maybe for your version 2.0 you can start to fancy it up. So in any event, let's go ahead and delete that. Let's go to our isometric view here and come in and begin our light. Just going to go ahead and pull this across to the midpoint, which is 1 inch. I guess that makes sense, doesn't it? And then C for circle. And I'm not drawing inside the group, I'm drawing this on here. And let's see, I'll come out 3/16 of an inch. Then I'll pull this surface out 1/16 of an inch. Then I'm going to tap my Option key to make a second surface and pull that out 1/16 of an inch. See, that makes that second line there. And with that in place, I can now scale this kind of like I did the smokestack. Just click on the circle, not the face, but just the circle. Type S for scale. Grab any corner grip, and while holding down your Option or Alt key, just kind of give that some flair like so. Okay, now I'm going to select the face, not the edge, but the face. Type in F for offset. Come in a little ways. Doesn't really matter how much. P for push pull and push it back. I'll click on that, then I'll type in 1/32 for 1/32 of an inch. Now, maybe that's too big, maybe it's too small. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to triple click on it and I'm going to make it a group. Now at this time you can take and type in S for scale, and by holding down or grabbing that middle grip right there and holding down the Option key so it scales it from the middle, and holding down the Shift key so that it keeps it uniform, you can make that bigger or smaller. Well, I kind of liked the size I made it, but just showing you what's possible here. Let's look around, see how that looks. I think that'll be okay. Now, this might, depending upon your 3D printer, you might need to have some supports underneath this, something that you can remove later on. Just depends. I think my 3D printer could probably handle this without any support material, but we'll certainly find out when we go about printing it. There's that line right there, that guideline, so I'll go ahead and erase that. And I'm going to go ahead and save my work. And next, and I think lastly, we're going to go ahead and make the roof of the cab. So I told you I'd show you my mistakes, and while I was preparing to make the roof, I noticed these edges on the window. And the reason those are there is that, well, let's see, double click to open up the group. See, those are individual edges, and they should all be welded together to make a circle. Probably, would be fine if you were just gonna go for this on the, computer. It could become an issue when you're 3D printing, because that's just a whole bunch of extra short edges that 3D printers might not like. When I come over to this side, see, that's a circle. But the inside circle has edges as well. See, zoom in here so you can see. So out here, all of the edges of the circle are welded together, but not so on the inside. So I'm just going to make new windows. So I'm just going to draw a selection box around here like that. When I draw from left, top left corner down to bottom right corner, it just selects the geometry that is inside the selection box. And I'm going to delete it. And then I'm going to do the same thing here. And I'm going to delete it. So with the round windows gone, I'm going to now take this opportunity to put in those arched windows that we saw in the photo that I showed you just a few minutes ago. So let's go ahead, we got to double click to open the group, and then I can align my view here. And I'll zoom in, and I'm just kind of spitballing here. But I think the engineer would appreciate a window that maybe starts about there. And let's see, make it just a little bit wider. And then A for arc, make a half circle. If you just want to put the round windows back in, that's fine too, of course. Or if you want to do something better, that's even cooler. So now I'm going to select this window here, and I'm going to type M for move, and just click on the edge and start to pull it across. But it's not coming across because my view is aligned. So what I need to do is tap my arrow keys again until it tells me I'm going the right direction. There we go. So now I can move it across the green axis. I'll type in my option key to make a copy, and I'll put it about right there. Okay, I'm sorry, the telephone rang there, so I got interrupted. I'm editing my cab group, if you want to call it that. So it's open for editing. I'm going to draw a selection box around like that, and then I'll go ahead and hold down my shift key to deselect the faces so that I just have the edges selected. I'm going to type M for move. I'm going to click right there, and then I'm going to tap my option or alt key, and I'm going to move them across along the red axis. I'm just going to kind of go along until a little pop-up tells me that I'm on the face. And now let's take and orbit around and see what we've got. Oh, look at that. Wrong face. And that's because I made my windows just a little too wide. So let's undo that and let's fix that. I'm going to just grab that window right there, type in S for scale, and I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. Like that. Maybe I'll move it up a little bit. And then I'm going to take this window, delete it, then grab this window, deselect the face, type in M for move, click right here, tap my option key, move along the green axis about right there. Let's see, I'm going to orbit down here I'm going to get them centered up just a little bit there, between there and there. So I'm going to grab both of them and type move, and this time I'm just going to kind of sneak them over along the green axis, maybe about right there. And then I'm going to take and move them again, and I'll just grab a point right there, tap my Option key to make a copy, and move them along the red axis until the pop-up tells me they're on the face that is made up of the inside of the cab. Then I can take my select tool, select that face, P for push pull, double click, double click, double click, and double click. And I can see that, I got a hole right there, don't I? See right in there? Must have done something somewhere along the line. So let's fix that by just drawing a line from here down to here to make a face. And let's see, it didn't want to make, you know what, I bet maybe I've got a hole there too. So we'll draw from there to there. And let's just make sure that we don't, yeah, that looks good. So we'll just go ahead and fix that. Sometimes that happens. I didn't get my window cut over here, did I? Or maybe I did an undo or something. Anyways, I'll click on that, push, pull, double click, and there we go. So now I've got my windows done and fixed correctly, and I like those. Those look better. But again, if you just want to have the circles, that's just fine too. So let's go ahead and make the roof now that we've got those little mistakes fixed. Okay, I went ahead and closed my browser and reopened it because my computer was starting to kind of act wonky, and that happens with Chrome. It really starts to suck up a lot of memory, especially if you have a bunch of tabs open. So in any event, I am going to draw the cab roof, and I'm going to draw it on top of this group down below. I'm not going to open it up for editing. So let's begin. Start with a rectangle and just go from corner to corner or vertex to vertex. Then I need this to be just a little bit bigger because, we don't want it to be too tight a fit. So I'm going to select the face, select offset, click on the face, and then just kind of draw a line outside like that. And then I'm going to come in and erase this edge so that now when I select this face, I get all of it and can push pull up, let's say 1/8 of an inch. Okay, so let's go ahead and just orbit around here, and you can see that we just basically made a rectangular solid that's just a little bit bigger. And we've got some extra lines in here which we can come in and clean up anytime we want. Now the next part, just kind of listen carefully because you're going to be using your Option or Alt key. I'm going to go ahead and select this face right here, and I'm going to type in the push-pull tool. Also tap your Option or Alt key because that makes a new surface here. And I'm going to pull that out about that far, and then I'm going to come over and select this face, tap my Option key, push-pull, then tap my Option key and pull this out, we'll say 1/8 of an inch. We'll orbit around, and then I'll select this, P for push pull, Option or Alt key. I'll pull this one back a little ways, and then I'll come around this side, select P for push pull, Alt or Option, and pull this out 1/8 of an inch. And then I'm just going to come in with my push pull tool, just going to kind of square some stuff up to make just one big rectangular solid. And come around this side, pull this out like that, and then finally I'll pull this back like so. Now, why did I do that? I want to be able to pull these down, and if I hadn't have made a new face when I was using my push-pull tool, that wouldn't have been possible. So now I'm going to pull this one down, let's say 1/8 of an inch, double click on that for the same amount, P for push pull, so I'll pull this down to that face, and then I'll pull that down there. So now we basically have this shell made. If I take and hide this, and let's see, I need to go to my display settings here and turn off hidden objects. you can see that we basically just kind of have a box that should fit right on top of the cab walls really nice. Once we kind of get it the shape that we want, now we can come in and start to erase these extra edges that we don't need. It wouldn't hurt to leave them, but no point in having them there. Got a couple on the back here. And don't forget there's going to be some on the bottom. So let's go back here and just kind of get our view squared away. And then this right here is just all faces and edges. So let's triple click on it at this point and make it a group before we forget to do that. Now that I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and open it right back up again and use my push-pull tool on this face, tap my option key, and pull it up about 1/8 of an inch. And then, with that face still selected, I'll type S for scale, and I'll grab a corner grip, and I'll hold down the option or the Alt key. I'm just going to pull this in just a little bit. You don't want to make the angle too skinny, because if you do that, we're going to print this upside down. So we just want a little bit of a taper. That's a little too much, I fear. So I'm just going to zoomed in and pull it out just a little bit. And I will close that, and I think our cab is done. At this particular point, I'm going to stop modeling and start to do some printing and prototyping to see what I want to change and what I don't want to change. If you don't want a 3D print, you can certainly come in to the paint bucket tool here and start to color your locomotive. And different groups will color different ways. Now, if you want to take and work with individual faces within a group, you can do that. You just have to open up the group for editing, like so. Okay, so you can go ahead and finish it however you want and print it or get it set up just however you'd like. Now, at this time, I'm going to do a couple things. One is I'm going to make a copy of this file. So I'm going to do a save as, and I'm going to call it prep for print. Call it anything you want. Okay, with that done, I'm going to go ahead and start to pull some things apart. So I'm going to grab this axle, or actually that's just a wheel, isn't it? So I'm going to pull that out, and I'll pull that out, pull that out, and pull that out. Okay, let's see what else we got. So here's my cab. That's going to be part of the body, isn't it? So I'll work with that in a minute here. I'll use the move tool to pull my roof over like that. This part's in the front, this part's there, and really all of these pieces here are going to print at the same time. What I'll do here, let's see, I'll orbit around a little bit, and then I'll select all of this here, and I'm going to make it one group. There we go. So I think we're pretty much ready to export this for printing. So before you export this for printing, make sure you go into your model info and change the units. Now you can draw it in inches, that's no problem, and that's what we did. But your 3D printer is going to interpret 2 inches as 2 millimeters, which of course is very small. So to fix that, all you have to do is just change your units to millimeters, and then you can go ahead and close this. So now I'm going to go through and export this as an STL file for 3D printing. I'll call it Toy Loco Prep for Print. Down here, standard tessellated geometry is what should come up, and you can go ahead and click Save. Now we exported that STL file, and you are going to take that file, and it's a pretty popular format, the STL file, and you're going to import it into your slicer. I use Prusa Slicer, you might use Cura, they all pretty much work the same, but it's well beyond the scope of what we're trying to do here to demonstrate every possible combination of of slicers that are available. So let's just go ahead and jump right in. And I'll cover the basics here. So I'm going to import my Locomotive, and it comes in pretty much as I had it laid out in SketchUp. I could have rotated all these parts around for 3D printing in SketchUp, but to be honest, it's much easier to do it with your slicing software. Now, this is all kind of one big block. It's just one file, but because each of these parts were groups, the cab roof, the wheels and axles, the wheels, the locomotive body, they're all can be treated or broken into individual pieces for printing. And to do that, I just go ahead and click here, and it drops these things down onto the build plate. And you'll notice over in my browser here, I've now got 7 parts instead of 1. So I'll go ahead and grab the first one here, this wheel, and I'm going to need to lay it down on the build plate because I obviously can't print it standing up in that orientation. So I'll just click that surface and it makes it flat. Rotate around here, and I'll do the same with this one. And then let's see here. Come back to my move tool. I am only going to print one wheel axle assembly and one wheel because I'm just going to do this print to see how everything turns out. My cab roof, I need to turn that over. Let's see. There we go. And I'll move it over, and for some reason the tapered part right here got separated from this part, but that's okay. I'm just going to click on that and delete that as well. And then I'll go ahead and use my slicing software here to get everything kind of bunched together. So that's the orientation on the build plate. If this is too big or too small, you can go ahead and scale it up, each of these parts. So for example, I could take the locomotive here and I could scale it up down here, scale factor, let's say 120%. And it'll make it bigger, but I want to make sure that I do that to all the other pieces as well, correct? Or else they're not going to fit together. We'll just need to make a couple of other settings here. I've got this set to draft mode. That is going to print really fast. Not going to be real smooth, and it's not going to be super strong, but this will print the quickest. I'm using PLA, which you probably are using in your classroom or at home. And under supports, I'm going to leave it for none. Now, I'm almost positive that these windows up here, that the archway, that's going to print okay. But I'm a little bit more concerned about this headlight, the overhang. And I'm not really going to know that until I try it. So at this particular time, I think we can just go ahead and slice it. So I'll do that. You can start to kind of come through here, and I'll zoom in here on the smokestack. So you can see each of these individual rings right here. These are beads of filament. So I've got a perimeter on the inside. I've got a couple perimeters there and a perimeter there, but the deeper I go, if I come down to here, you can see that the printer, to save time and money or material, it starts to just kind of print this crosshatch pattern. And I've got my infill set to 20%. I might even lower it to 5%, if I'm doing some drafting, because I'm just pretty much interested in the outside perimeters or layers rather than it being strong on the inside. See that fill material there? And let's see, I come down, there's a bunch more fill material in here, etc. So that looks pretty good. So now I'm going to export what's called my G-code. Oh, by the way, this is a 4-hour and 13-minute print, at least on my printer. So I'll export my G-code, and it goes ahead and it gives it a model name like that. I'll just stick it someplace that I can find it. And next thing I'll do is prepare it with Octoprint. So this is Octoprint. This is what I use to wirelessly send my print to my 3D printer. You probably are using an SD card, or you might even have like a laptop hooked up to your printer via the USB port. I'm not going to go into how to use this because it's pretty specific. But basically the process is the same no matter what. I'm going to upload my G-code file. So there it is right there. And then I just go ahead and click on the print button, and it will start to move my printer around where I can, where I can watch it. So that's what I'm going to do. Let's see how the print looks. Okay, here's what we ended up with. Turned out pretty good overall. Just like I suspected, the windows printed really well. The bridging right inside here turned out good. The hitch on the back, nice and strong. The holes for the axles, they look pretty good, but they look just a little bit oblong, like when it was printing the tops of the wheels. Is possibly there was a little bit of filament sag there. The most disappointing part is the headlight. I did get a little bit of a drip there on the end, and I have to decide whether or not I like that or not. I'm going to offer a couple different solutions here. My wheel and axle, they turned out great. I mean, they fit together perfect, and I wouldn't change any of that. I could leave that wheel on there. It's a tight enough fit. And remember, I was just doing like a guess and check thing there, but I happened to guess correctly in this particular case, and I can just glue that with a little bit of super glue, and we'd be good to go. Now, this is called a dial caliper, and I'm going to go ahead, excuse me, not a dial, it was a dial caliper back when I was in college, before there was such a thing as a pocket calculator. That's how far Mr. Westland goes back. So I'm going to just go ahead and set this. This is a digital caliper now. They're only about 30 bucks, and they are fantastic. So I'll go ahead and measure this here, and I get 0.247, which is just a little bit less than a, looks like I moved it. But anyway, I said 0.247. That's just a little bit less than 1/4 of an inch. When I measure this hole, and I can do that with the other end here, I get 0.249, an average of about that. So that is a pretty tight fit, and just like I suspected, I mean, I can get it to go in, but it's not going to rotate freely. So how do I fix that? Well, when I reprint it, I can make the axle a little bit smaller. Now remember, I printed this in draft mode, and so it's a little bit rough on this surface here. You can sand that down with some sandpaper, or, yep, there we go. Or I got a file here, and I can just kind of go along like that and take some of the roughness off. Or if you have a 1/4 inch drill bit, and of course I do, I can just take, I'll kind of step back away from my keyboard here. And let's see how that works. Where'd I put it? There we go. It's certainly a lot better, but it would need just a little bit more work. So there's that part of it. Let's go through and do just a little bit of modifying, and then let's go ahead and print it again. Okay, so here I am back in SketchUp, and I'm going to go ahead and just make a few modifications. First of all, in the last chapter, I forgot to mention that the cab roof fits pretty good, but if you remember back a couple of chapters ago, the top part of this model, this part right up here, seemed to be somehow separate from this. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and explode the group, and then I'm going to take and triple click on it and make it a group again. So hopefully that'll fix that. Now the next thing that I want to deal with is that, you know, I really like the fit between this axle and this wheel, so I don't want to make it smaller. Instead, I'm going to make these holes bigger. So to do that, I'm going to double click on the group. Remember, I grouped the cab and the body and the cowcatcher. I grouped all those parts together, so I need to triple click inside until I can select this edge. And because I used to have a line across here, this is just a semicircle, so I'll hold down my shift key and grab that. I'll type F for offset, and I'll just come out just a little bit. Now I'm working in millimeters, aren't I? Remember, I changed it to millimeters. So let's make that 0.1 millimeters. And that looks pretty good. And then I should have a fresh edge, or excuse me, part. There we go, I have that face right there. So P for push pull. And I will, let's see, push that all the way through. I need to orbit around. Whoop. I'll orbit around and I'll pull that out. Whoops. There we go, to that face right there. And then I'm going to do the same thing here. I'll just double click. And when I come around to the other side, it made that hole larger. So now I'm going to do the same thing to this hole here. I'm going to select that edge, and this one's a whole circle, and that's because when I was working on the front here, it was a little bit different. Anyways, F for offset, click, pull out, and type in 0.1, and then again I'll click on this face, P for push pull, double click, and it should go all the way through the other side, and it looks like it almost, didn't it? So if I click on that circle right there and delete it, and that circle right there and delete it, we should be in good shape. But we're not. I can't, so I have to click on that face and delete it. And let's see here. There we go. Now we can see through. So with these changes made, I'm just about ready to export, but I'm going to do one more thing because I've been doing just a little bit of practicing off screen. And that is, remember how I took and grouped these pieces in together? Well, what I'm going to do is just take, and since I have a file, you know, a duplicate of the file, I don't have to worry about messing up my work if I want to come back. I'm going to go ahead and select all of that, and I'm going to explode it. And that breaks it into the cab, the smokestack, the headlight, the cowcatcher, etc. And I'm going to explode it again. So now it's just all individual edges and faces. And then I'm going to grab it all one more time, and this time I'm going to make it one group. And that is what you want to do for 3D printing if you can. So let's go ahead and export it now as an STL file. And so we'll do that. Okay. So here I am back in my slicing software. So I'm going to bring in my STL file. And again, it's just one big STL file with objects off the print bed. So I need to not explode it, but break it into individual groups. And then I'm going to just go ahead and just kind of move some stuff around so it's at least on the bed. Just notice how it's blue. That's because it's off the bed. At least improves the slicer. So that looks okay, but we can't print it that way, so we need to lay some of these faces down. So I'll click on this, click on that, lay that down, click on that, lay that down. With the hole up, come around here, like so, and I need to turn that upside down so that the underside, or the part that fits on top of the cab, is in that position. So I'm going to arrange everything, and this is what the slicer software tells me is the least amount of travel for the print head. I'm not sure I believe it, so I'm just going to go ahead and move some of these parts, kind of just cluster them closer together. And then I'm going to slice. Now, I get an error that's telling me that there's something there with no geometry in it. So let's investigate. So I'll click on that element, looks okay. That one's okay. That's okay. That's okay. That's okay. Wait, nothing's selected. Let's click on that one. Well, that looks okay. So I'm going to click on this one, and I'm just going to delete that. There's probably just some artifacts from SketchUp, maybe some move I made. You're not going to have the same artifacts. If you follow what I've done to the T, you're probably not going to get that mistake. SketchUp is doing tons of math behind the scenes, and all we can do is just kind of the best we can. So let's go ahead and slice it and see what we get. And I've set my supports now to everywhere. My slicing software, Prusa Slicer, doesn't allow me to, for example, just provide a support for the headlight. At least if it does, I haven't figured it out yet. So I'll go ahead and slice it. And now I have support for the headlight, which I can peel away. I'll show you that when we get done. I've got supports for the holes here. I've got supports for the windows, although I don't really need them. The slicer's going to do it. It added about an hour of printing time down here. So instead of 4.5 hours, I've now got about 3.5 hours. Other than that, it's looking pretty... Oh, wait, what's that right there? Looks like it's adding just a little bit of support underneath these corners of the cab roof. But that's okay. I'll show you how that's pretty easy to fix. So I'm going to export my G code and save it. And then let's see, let's bring Octoprint back into the fold here. Again, you're gonna do this probably somehow differently. I'll go to upload and upload my G code, and then I'm going to go ahead and click on print. And when I come over here into Octoprint, it's probably, well, it's moving kind of slow, but the printer's starting to heat up. You can see it down here, and we'll go ahead and record that for you, and then we will come back and see how our print turns out. Okay, let's take a look at what we've got. Here's my stainless steel build plate, and we'll just kind of orbit this around a little bit the old-fashioned way. So you can see here the build support for the headlight. And let's go ahead and separate it here. Just bend that and pull the pieces off, and let's see how it fits together. Now you can see the support material along here for our arched windows. We've got the same thing here along the headlight. Let's see if we can, or how well that peels away. Oh, actually peels away pretty good. Now a large part of this is going to be due to what you have your printer settings at. I can pull it away there. Let's try one of these side windows here. It came off really nice and clean right here. And to be honest, I'm not really sure with this particular print if this is going to be better than just fixing what I had without any support material. But actually it looks pretty good. You know, this window right in here is nice and clean. I can pull this support material off. And it really looks pretty nice and smooth. Now, what about down here with the wheels, or where the axles go through these holes? We've got a little bit of material there that I'm just going through and pulling out. And I'll come over to this side and do sort of the same thing. Let's get down here where we're interested, where the hole goes through the axle. And I'm really very impressed with the way the slicer assigned the temperatures and the contact between each bead of PLA. So, see, that really, I mean, that right in there is just really clean. Now this hole, I don't know. The quickest way to fix that is going to be to just go through it, grab Mr. 1/4-inch drill bit, and get out all that material. Makes a little bit of a mess, but that's why we have vacuum cleaners. So that looks good. Let's take a look at our wheels and axles here. Those should not have changed because I did not change the model. And actually, it is just a little bit changed, just a little bit of a looser fit. And I expect that's because I changed the print settings for a more tolerant or finer detail print. But when I put that in, that fits pretty good. And I can glue this wheel on there. And, whoops, where'd it go? There we go. Glue this wheel on there and be in pretty good shape. So the only other part left is the cab. That is the cab roof. Top of that turned out beautiful because that part was actually laying on the bed. We've got our nice taper, and we put it on top here. Just a tiniest bit of wiggle room, but that's the kind of thing that you can go ahead and fix with just a little bit of glue. So here's our 3D printed train. Needs just a little bit more cleaning up, but overall I'm very happy with how that turned out. I hope yours turns out just as well. Actually, that's not true. I hope yours turns out a whole bunch better than mine. That you've made some improvements, that you've made it your way. And of course, if you have any questions at all, please just let me know.